That chronic indecision isn't protecting us at all. It's actually tearing us apart from the inside. You're teaching your subconscious a very dark lesson. My own judgment cannot be trusted. But questioning whether you chose correctly, that mental replay loop can literally haunt you for 2 years.
You convince yourself that if you just think hard enough, right? If you find one more article or read just one more review, the clouds will part and the right path will finally reveal itself.
And it never does.
It never does. It is
Mhm.
just the sheer physiological exhaustion from constantly second guessing every single move you make long before you even make it.
It is completely draining.
Huh.
I mean, it's a psychological trap so many of us fall into because we deeply believe that this endless hesitation is just us being responsible, being
We
careful.
did our due diligence.
Exactly. But beneath the surface, that chronic indecision isn't protecting us at all. It's actually tearing us apart from the inside
Yeah.
and completely eroding our self-trust.
It really is. We want to welcome you directly into this conversation today. Thank you so much to our incredible community for tuning in. If you find value in what we do, please make sure to subscribe to the channel.
Absolutely.
You are listening to an episode of the Living Better podcast, and our mission today is to break down the exact actionable systems you need to stop doubting your decisions and finally rebuild that internal trust.
Because the incredible irony of decision paralysis is that most people don't actually struggle with the mechanics of making a choice.
No.
No, they struggle with the heavy burden of living with it afterward. Like, think about the timeline of a major life event, right? Choosing between two competing job offers might take you 2 days of intense deliberation.
Yeah, the stressful weekend.
Exactly. But questioning whether you chose correctly, that mental replay loop can literally haunt you for 2 years. The decision itself is remarkably short. It's the aftermath that silently drains your energy.
2 days to decide, 2 years of mental torture. Like, why does our own neurology turn against us like that?
It's fascinating, honestly.
And I'll be vulnerable right out of the gate here. I spent years questioning every choice, desperately searching for more data, just wanting some external reassurance. And the crazy part, after all that exhausting research, I was still terrified of making the wrong move.
Well, to understand that terror, you have to look past the surface emotion. You have to examine the brain's hardware, specifically the amygdala.
Okay, the fear center.
Right. Thousands of years ago, the human brain evolved this brilliant alarm system. Back then, uncertainty literally meant physical danger. If you didn't know what was rustling in the bushes, or if you weren't certain a path was safe, you didn't survive.
Right, uncertainty wasn't some abstract philosophical concept. It was a literal predator.
Exactly. But here's the problem. The modern world has drastically changed, but our neurological software hasn't updated at all.
We're running old code.
Precisely. Today, the threats are entirely abstract. We're staring at a laptop asking, what if this career pivot fails? Or what if I invest my savings at a wrong time?
Yeah, everyday stuff.
But the amygdala cannot tell the difference between a bad 401k decision and a saber-toothed tiger. When you face modern uncertainty, your brain floods your system with cortisol.
Wow.
And that cortisol actively suppresses your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for logic, reason, and executive function. Your body is physically preparing to fight or flee, not to analyze a spreadsheet.
That makes so much sense. So when I'm stressing over a career move, my brain literally thinks my life is in immediate danger. That completely explains the tight chest and the racing heart.
Yes, your biology is hijacking your logic.
But hold on, if uncertainty is the predator triggering this cortisol spike, isn't gathering data the best weapon I have? Like, I always tell myself that watching just one more deep dive video or reading one more white paper is just me being responsible. I'm reducing the threat level.
It feels responsible, absolutely. But that is exactly where the trap of information collection catches you. Gathering data is subject to the law of diminishing returns.
Oh, so?
The first 20% of information you gather on a subject is crucial. It dramatically improves the quality of your choice. You understand the baseline risks. You see the market averages.
Right, you get the lay of the land.
Exactly. The next 20% might help refine a few edges. But beyond that, you are no longer learning. You are just procrastinating with research.
Ouch. Okay, that hits hard.
It's true. You develop an addiction to certainty. You just keep scrolling and reading because you're hoping a magic piece of data will make the fear go away. But data cannot cure an emotional response.
An addiction to certainty. That hits a little too close to home, to be honest. It honestly feels like I'm hosting an exhausting committee meeting inside my head all day long.
Oh, I love that analogy.
It's awful. Every single voice is shouting a different worst-case scenario based on conflicting data points I found online. One voice says, stay. One says, leave. One says, invest. One says, wait. I'm totally depleted before I even take a single step.
And that internal committee is thriving because we've all bought into a massive myth about what confidence actually is.
What's the myth?
We look at successful founders or leaders making these bold, sweeping life changes, and we assume those people possess some magical clarity. We think they are certain.
Yeah, they aren't.
They aren't. Confident people don't magically know they're making the perfect choice. They have simply learned to accept the presence of uncertainty much earlier than everyone else. Highly successful people are not perfect decision makers. They're just highly efficient recoverers.
Wow. So what does this constant need for certainty actually cost us beneath the surface? Because if endless research is actually a biological trap, what is this chronic overthinking truly destroying? I know it costs time, and it definitely costs money and missed opportunities.
Yeah, those are the visible costs, and they hurt. But the invisible cost, the one that does the real long-term damage, is the cost to your identity.
My identity.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is a principle in neuroscience called Hebb's Law. It states, neurons that fire together wire together. Every time you face a choice, panic, second-guess your instincts, and refuse to commit, you are physically wiring a specific pathway in your brain.
Oh, man.
You're teaching your subconscious a very dark lesson. My own judgment cannot be trusted.
That is terrifying.
It is, because if you repeat that hesitation cycle enough times, you won't even need a difficult problem to trigger the anxiety. You will just fundamentally identify as someone who is incompetent at navigating life.
Okay, I have to jump in here and argue the other side of this.
Up for it.
Because I've always viewed my ability to analyze all angles as like a massive advantage. I'm intelligent, I can map out complex systems, and I can see the 10 invisible pitfalls that my competitors miss. Are you telling me that my analytical skills, the very things that make me good at my job, are actually a disadvantage when it comes to personal decisions?
Intelligence is a spectacular tool, but it's a tool that can effortlessly build a mental prison.
A prison?
Yes, because a highly analytical mind is powerful enough to generate 10 incredibly logical reasons why a project will be a massive success. But that exact same intellect can immediately pivot and generate 10 highly plausible, terrifying reasons why it will bankrupt you.
Yeah.
You end up treating life like a game of chess with infinite pieces, trying to calculate variables in a chaotic system that fundamentally cannot be calculated. That intense, rigorous analysis you're so proud of, it frequently morphs into avoidance wearing a suit.
That is brutally accurate.
It's hard to hear, but it's true.
It feels so productive, so professional. I've got the spreadsheets, the risk models, the color-coded pros and cons lists. But if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm just hiding behind the data so I don't have to be vulnerable to failure. I guess I've been labeling all that cognitive overload as an anxiety disorder.
It's a very common misdiagnosis. People go to therapy thinking they have a profound anxiety problem, but in reality, they're just crushing their own nervous system under the weight of cognitive overload.
Because we want a guarantee.
Exactly. They are demanding that life give them a mathematical guarantee before they move. But life doesn't deal in guarantees. It only offers probabilities.
So if calculating every angle is a prison and I need to stop demanding a guarantee, how do we fundamentally reframe our mindset to break this paralysis? Because the fear of picking the wrong path is still incredibly real to me.
It requires a foundational shift in how you view the end game. The goal of decision making is not and can never be making the right choice.
Wait, then what is it?
The actual goal is becoming the type of person who can create good outcomes from fundamentally imperfect decisions. And that brings us to the first principle of decision making. You are never actually choosing between two futures.
Wait, what am I choosing between then? Because if I'm deciding between staying in my current job or moving across the country for a startup, those are literally two very different
No,
futures.
there are two different stories about the future. And those stories are being aggressively edited, directed, and scored by your current emotional state. Neither of those futures actually exists yet.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. It's exactly like my brain is directing a movie about my life, but it has absolutely zero reliable footage to work with.
Yes, perfect analogy.
And because my internal narrator has been steeped in stress and cortisol lately, I've realized it's taking the objective facts of an opportunity and directing it like a disaster film.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, the job offer hasn't changed, but my internal director is using dramatic lighting and scary music to project fear onto every single detail.
That is exactly what's happening. Your brain is a cynical Hollywood director. And that's exactly why asking yourself which future is guaranteed to be better is a completely useless question. You're comparing two imaginary, heavily biased cinematic universes.
So, what questions should we be asking?
You need to ask yourself a much more grounded question. Which uncertainty am I more willing to live with?
Which uncertainty am I more willing to live with? Wow, that completely flips the script.
It does.
It strips away the illusion of a perfect choice and acknowledges that uncertainty is coming along for the ride, no matter which door I open.
Always. Every major decision is simply an exchange of one flavor of uncertainty for another. If you stay in the stable, boring job, you have to live with the uncertainty of your own potential. You live with the ghost of what if.
Yeah, that lingering regret.
But if you leave for the startup, you face massive financial and operational uncertainty, but you completely eliminate the uncertainty of regret. Making that mental shift moves you from a passive state to a powerful state. It moves you from trying to predict the weather to actually preparing the ship. Because life consistently rewards adaptability over prediction.
Okay, I love the depth of this philosophical shift. Preparing the ship instead of predicting the weather makes total sense. But but when we are physically standing at the crossroads, like the contract is sitting on the desk and the pen is in our hand, what is the exact mechanical framework we need to use to force action?
The first mechanism is the 80% rule. You must pull the trigger and decide when you have roughly 80% of the information you realistically need.
It's 80%.
Yes. If you wait until you hit 95 or 100% certainty, the market will have shifted, the competitor will have launched, or the opportunity will completely vanish.
Taking action at 80% sounds incredibly reckless, to be honest.
Does it?
Yeah. What if that missing 20% of data hides a fatal flaw in the contract? What if the new company has a toxic culture that I just didn't uncover? Isn't waiting for that last 20% just basic, necessary due diligence to protect myself from a disaster?
That is your amygdala talking, masquerading as mature logic again. Yes, due diligence is vital, but you have to account for the quiet, brutal cost of delay.
The cost of delay.
Every single week you spend paralyzed, waiting for that magical last 20% of data to appear is a decision in itself. If an active choice to remain exactly where you are. Action is what creates clarity, thinking does not.
Wow. Yeah.
When you act, your real-world experience compresses the uncertainty. When you overthink, you just stretch the uncertainty out indefinitely across your timeline.
So we literally have to move in order to find out what happens, but moving doesn't have to mean betting the farm, right?
Exactly. You don't have to take giant blind leaps into the abyss. You use the concept of making small bets, or what the tech world calls a minimum viable product.
Right, test the concept first.
Instead of quitting your job, draining your life savings, and trying to build a massive global software company on day one, you test the waters. Can you build a basic prototype on the weekends? Can you get just 10 strangers to pay you for it?
That feels way less threatening.
You cap your downside risk while keeping the upside potential completely open. And when you inevitably feel that familiar urge to retreat back to the safety of research,
Which I always do.
we all do. But when it happens, you hit yourself with this brutal filter question. Am I protecting my future right now, or am I just protecting my comfort?
Man, that cuts right through the nonsense.
Huh.
Because fear has an amazing PR department, doesn't it?
The best.
It dresses up as logic, strategy, and maturity, telling me I'm just being a cautious professional, when the stark reality is I just want to stay comfortable on the couch and completely avoid the vulnerability of trying.
Precisely. Avoidance wearing a suit. Now, let's play this out. Let's say you've pushed past the comfort zone. You utilized the 80% rule. You built the prototype. You made the choice, but the outcome is bad. It doesn't go perfectly.
Oh, this is the worst part. The aftermath. The Croatia.
Right, because this is where a psychological habit emerges that silently destroys your confidence faster than anything else we've discussed. It's the toxic habit of replay.
Replay.
Replay is looping instead of learning. It traps your consciousness in a past reality that literally no longer exists, and you spend all your energy desperately trying to rewrite history.
I'm so incredibly guilty of this, like painfully guilty.
Most high performers are.
A few years ago, I made a major business decision to partner with a specific vendor, and it went south fast. It cost the company a lot of money, and it bruised my ego. For months, I kid you not, I woke up every single morning at 4 a.m. staring at the ceiling, just punishing myself.
Oh, it's brutal.
I would watch the exact same movie with the exact same ending in my head over and over. I should have seen the red flags. I should have negotiated harder. I'm an idiot.
Let me ask you a tough question about that specific period, and I ask this with profound empathy for how painful that is. During those 4 a.m. sessions, were you objectively extracting data to improve your next venture? Or were you just actively punishing yourself for not being clairvoyant?
Wow. If I'm being brutally honest, I was absolutely just punishing myself. There was zero actionable learning happening. It was pure self-flagellation.
And that happens because human beings are terrible at separating the decision process from the outcome. In psychology, there's a concept called resulting, which was popularized by professional poker players.
Resulting.
It's the fallacy of judging the quality of a decision purely by its result. We live in a highly complex world, heavily influenced by randomness and luck. A terrible, reckless decision can sometimes get lucky and yield a massive payout.
Right.
Conversely, a brilliant, highly researched, statistically perfect decision can fail temporarily due to an unpredictable market crash or some global event. If you judge your mental process purely by the immediate result, you will teach yourself terrible lessons. You'll start abandoning good strategies just because you caught a bad break.
So how do we actually evaluate a choice without tearing ourselves apart? If the outcome is bad, my immediate instinct is to just assume my entire process was fundamentally flawed.
You strip the emotion out by acting as an auditor. You ask yourself 3 specific reflection questions. First, did I act on the information I genuinely had access to at the time?
Right. Not the information I possess now in hindsight, but what I actually knew on Tuesday when I signed the paper.
Exactly. Hindsight bias is incredibly toxic. Second question, did I choose from a place of clarity and alignment instead of panic or fear?
And if the answer is yes, then the process was structurally sound, regardless of the mess that followed. What's the third question?
Third, what specific variable would I adjust next time? Notice what is deliberately missing from those questions.
Yeah, there's no blame.
There is zero room for moral judgment, shame, or self-abuse. You are simply extracting the data, upgrading your internal algorithm, and leaving the guilt behind.
Extract the data, leave the guilt. That's powerful. But to prevent that punishing loop from happening in the first place, we clearly need proactive systems. Like, how do we ground ourselves and build structural confidence before we leap?
One of the most effective tools used by top executives is a 1-page decision journal.
How does that work?
Before you take action, you write down the specific information you have. You clearly articulate your biggest uncertainty, the fear keeping you awake, and you realistically define what success looks like. The magic of this tool doesn't happen today. It happens 6 months from now.
When you review it.
Yes. When you look back at that page, you will see written proof that your catastrophic apocalyptic fears almost never came true.
I love that. I love the idea of tracking my own psychological data to prove my anxiety wrong. But what about getting outside perspective? When I'm stuck, my immediate reflex is to crowdsource.
Yeah.
I want to ask mentors, industry peers, friends what they think. Isn't it just human nature to want someone with more experience to just hand you the answer?
There is immense value in targeted perspective, sure. But relying on crowdsourcing creates a massive identity crisis. The profound irony is that chronically asking everyone for advice actually atrophies your own judgment.
Really?
Yes. When you bring your complex problem to 5 different people, you aren't getting objective truth. You are getting your problem filtered through their personal values, their unique risk tolerance, and, most dangerously, their unresolved past trauma. You effectively turn your brain into a noisy, chaotic committee.
So I just shouldn't ask for advice at all. I should just isolate myself.
No.
Okay.
You just change the fundamental question you ask. Stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, what am I not seeing?
Oh, that's a subtle shift, but it's huge.
It moves you from giving away your agency and responsibility to simply expanding your peripheral vision. And to quiet the noise even further, you must define your core values before the crisis of the decision arrives.
Like having a rubric.
Exactly. If you have clearly defined that geographic flexibility is a non-negotiable core value for your family, then turning down a highly lucrative in-office job isn't a complex, agonizing emotional choice. It's just a simple alignment issue. The value makes the decision for you.
That makes so much sense. You're building the anchor before the storm hits. But what if I'm already in the storm? Like if I'm spinning out right in the middle of a workday and the panic is just rising.
You execute the 5-minute reset, you put the phone in another room, no browsers, no text threads, no outside inputs, just you and a physical notebook for 5 minutes.
Just 5 minutes.
You answer 5 grounding questions to break the cortisol loop. What decision am I actually making? What am I specifically afraid of? What variables are genuinely in my control right now? What is one microscopic action I can take today? And finally, this is the big one. If I trusted myself just 10% more, what would my next move be?
Man, I am writing that one down immediately. It completely lifts the fog because it removes the massive pressure of needing 100% total certainty.
Yes, it lowers the stakes.
What is the ultimate foundation of making great choices?
The ultimate foundation is the underlying relationship you maintain with yourself. We have to start treating our life's decisions like scientific experiments, which inherently generates curiosity, rather than treating them like final exams, which inherently generates paralyzing fear.
Curiosity over fear.
Right. Because confidence isn't a genetic trait or magic. Confidence is simply the historical evidence you collect after keeping a series of small promises to yourself.
True confidence isn't about launching a massive company on a whim or jumping out of an airplane. It's literally just waking up at 6 a.m. when you set the alarm for 6 a.m. It's having the hard conversation with a friend that you promised yourself you'd have. It's just finishing what you started.
Beautifully said. Every single action you take is a vote for your identity. If you consistently avoid hard things, you forge an identity of someone who expects avoidance. But identity is fluid. It is updated through evidence. To help generate that positive evidence when you're standing at the crossroads, we can run your choice through a 5-step decision filter.
Lay it on us. Let's walk through it.
Step 1. Define the real decision. Ask yourself, are you actually solving the right problem?
Give me an example of that.
Okay, are you agonizing over whether to take a promotion based on the salary? Or is the real decision whether you are willing to become the type of person that high-stress job requires? We often obsess over the surface metrics to avoid facing the deeper identity shift.
That's incredibly common. We use spreadsheet math to avoid soul searching. Okay, what's step 2?
Step 2. Remove the emotional distortion. Remember, fear is a biological signal. It's a fire alarm in the hallway. It requires your attention to check for smoke, but it is not an instruction manual telling you to permanently evacuate the building. You acknowledge the alarm, but you don't let it drive.
Got it. Step 3 has to be about setting the rules before the alarm gets too loud.
Exactly right. Step 3 is choose your criteria before emotions take over. You decide the standards of the deal, the minimum salary, or the required boundaries while your prefrontal cortex is still fully engaged before the cortisol floods your system and makes you desperate.
Make the rules when you're calm.
Yes. Then, step 4, commit without needing permission.
Oof, that feels like the hardest one. Closing the door completely to doubt. If I keep one foot out the door, constantly hedging my bets just in case it fails, I never actually experience the reality of the choice. I'm sabotaging the experiment.
You cannot evaluate the results of an experiment if you refuse to fully run it. Which brings us to step 5, review, don't regret. You deploy those 3 reflection questions we talked about earlier. You extract the cold, hard data, you update your mental models, and you move forward without all the emotional baggage.
Define the real decision. Remove emotional distortion. Choose criteria early. Commit fully. And review without regret. The entire architecture of this mindset is that feelings are just data points. They are not mandates.
Exactly.
You can have profound doubt, your stomach can be in knots, and you can still take the next step. You don't need to sit around waiting to feel ready to begin. You become ready through the friction of the action itself.
Exactly. And that realization opens a profound, entirely new door. Because learning to navigate the psychology of making a decision, that is truly just the prologue.
The prologue, I feel like signing the paper and making the choice is the entire battle.
It is only the visible battle. The real hidden war begins in the quiet weeks and months after the choice is finalized.
What do you mean?
How do you maintain consistency when the initial surge of motivation completely disappears? How do you keep executing on the new business or the new lifestyle when the excitement fades, the dopamine drops, and absolutely nobody is watching or cheering for you? Genuine, unshakable confidence isn't actually built in the exhilarating, dramatic moment you finally decide. It is painstakingly built in the lonely, mundane moments afterward when you prove to your own brain that you actually meant it.
The decision is just the starting line. That is a heavy, brilliant truth that I'm going to be thinking about for a long time. As always, remember to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on our next conversation. Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you next time.